it'll be easier if it's just one big long roll rather than yeah. Anyway, all right. Hello and welcome. All right, and so if you guys can please introduce yourselves and then just let us know how long you've been attending Light of the World Gospel Ministries, and then specifically when you left and which month.
My name is Shelley Bacon, and my husband and I have been attending Light of the World Gospel Ministries for close to 15 years, and we stopped going the first part of August of this year, 2023.
My name's Christine Fernandez, and my family and I have attended Light of the World Gospel Ministries for almost 10 and a half years, and my three younger children stopped attending in August of 2023, and my older two left September of 2023.
I'm Sherry Uding, and my husband and I attended Light of the World Gospel Ministries for almost 13 years, and we left the church probably a month and a half to 2 months ago.
Okay. Who wants to start? And I guess when it comes to the things that started, red flag you started to see at Light of the World, where did it all start?
I think I'd like to start with biblical womanhood and how we were studying and how the questions came up and how I submitted to authority by having the pastor come in and answer those questions. I think that's where it went downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually a really, really great study. I was so thankful how you facilitated it. You weren't even leading it. You were just really humble and just wanting to learn and wanting to be a biblical woman in God's eyes. We just wanted to be pleasing to the Lord, and even being willing to be like, oh, is there anything that we're doing that's like our own will and not the Lord's will and how we're doing things? But yeah.
No, it was so good. And I feel like it knit a group of us women together. We got to know one another better because we got to share our struggles as trying to be biblical women. And it was, I want to say that was the best women's study that I've ever been a part of.
And this was part of one of the services at Light of the World, correct?
It was Monday night every couple weeks. Every 2 weeks we would meet together.
A book study.
A book study, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a group of women. And there were questions. The questions, some of them came up in the book as far as women speaking in church, but it had also come up at men's theology. And there were just some questions as to, should young girls be taught by women? Should young men be taught by men? Were we doing that right in the church? Just some wrestlings that some women were having as this book study went by. And we decided that we needed to have the pastor in, being submissive to his authority to answer these questions. So we scheduled a night to have the pastor in to answer the questions, and we were thinking that it was going to be a question and answer session. But instead, we felt like he came with an agenda, and we weren't allowed to ask any questions until the service got over, and then some questions were asked.
Right. And it was even announced from a young lady was announcing and promoting, come and you get to ask questions too. It was being promoted as instead of a men's theology night where the men come together and answer questions, it was like a women's theology night where we could come together and ask our pastor questions. And a text was even sent out, and it listed a bunch of items to be discussed. Children ministries, even youth camp, and just what are our roles as biblical women and what are the roles for the men. I personally just didn't want to take a role that a man was designed to take, which was amazing because, usually women, we like to, we get things done and things like that if we can, or we like to help and things like that. So, but I just didn't want to take something away from the men that they were designed to do because, it's a beautiful thing when we follow God's lead.
So, starting there, um, what are the events that followed after you guys started having your meetings?
Yeah.
And then how long was that How long was it going on for the meetings?
Yeah. We started when? How long did Biblical
Women's
Women
meeting.
start?
It went about 6 months.
Started in January?
Yeah, and it went every other week until May 22nd, I believe, was the last time we met. We had finished the book, and so it had gone that long. And in that time, we had had the pastor in because he was leaving for vacation. We had him in before we finished the book, before we even got to some of the subject matter that he came in to talk about. It had already come up at men's theology, and so the questionings were already in our minds.
Yeah. And so what happened was when he came, I think he said, okay, well, ladies, you guys have questions. And then like one or two maybe questions were
Well,
at the
there was just,
beginning.
at the beginning? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I had shared. Did you have a question that you asked at the beginning? I know at the end you did,
I
but
did ask a question, but I don't remember what
you
it
don't remember what that one was. And then I know I asked because I was like, well, it's such a grave thing. I'm teaching men's children at children's church. Was that okay? Because, Paul was sharing how biblically it's not okay for women to be pastors and stuff like that. So to be like a leader like that. So then I'm like, well, when's the line? When is it not okay for us to start teaching men where it looks like we're teaching over a congregation? So I wanted to know because if this was a role for a man, I didn't want to be in his way. Um, yeah, I wanted to make sure they knew that you are so welcome to teach the children. You're designed to teach, then go for it, What Paul did do was he had a very good, I believe it was a very good lesson from basically Genesis to Revelation on how God has used women through the Bible.
Yeah.
So it was very good, and he later made a point that he put 3 days into it and stuff like that. But it was a very good lesson. But there was a portion that was kind of taken out that was he didn't really go into it, just a little bit in the beginning, before he started about, well, he has problems like with why do women question so much where men don't. And that was a different phrase. And I remember I'm saying I'm a widow, and at that point I'd almost been a single mom at widow for 9 years almost at that point. And so I was like, well, I have more questions than maybe a married woman might, because I don't have a husband to bounce off. Plus, I'm kind of feel like the gatekeeper, not just the homekeeper, but the gatekeeper. So I want to make sure that I'm sharing and relaying wise things to my children. I'm more on alert than, and I know another single mom at that church would totally resonate with me as well. That we're just more on alert than, say, when you have a husband. I'm definitely more on alert than when my husband was alive. And so I do have more questions. I want to make sure we're doing things biblically and not emotionally. And where are we getting this from? And where's the foundation of things? I have been way more curious and way more asking questions where I'd more than likely, go to my husband already if he wouldn't have already been asking that among the guys as well. So
But there wasn't really ample opportunity for questions and discussion. There
it
really
wasn't what we
wasn't.
thought it
It wasn't
was.
what we thought it was. And it wasn't until the very end. We were just sitting there. There was a small group of us, and the pastor was sitting there. And he said the one thing he really liked about um, this was the transparency, that we could be real with one another. And I said, if we're going to be real, can I ask a question? And he said yes. And I asked the question, what do you think about family camp? Was the question I asked.
Hmm. And then, and so I was like, oh, and so she asked this question. So I was like, oh, some of the ladies had left, and then some of them were staying. So I was like, oh, hey, you guys, like, let's hear what's the question and answer part starting. So I was, bringing them over.
This was after
The sermon. He actually shared a sermon.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you had mentioned that there might be some ladies that weren't going.
Yes. I was like, yeah.
And that totally threw him off.
which I didn't know it would throw him off.
Going to youth camp.
Going to
Going
youth
to
camp.
youth
So there
camp.
was a couple like youth leader ladies that weren't able to go, and so this meeting we're having, and mind you, I'd only gone to 5 of the biblical womanhood meetings. I just gone through 5, and I think at that
There were
point,
12.
yeah. So I had gone at that point about half of them.
Well, and you weren't going around asking women if they were going to youth camp or not.
No.
You were asking because it directly affected you because you had been helping at youth camp
Yeah.
and you were trying to figure out if you were going to be asked this year because they never told you until like a week before.
No, your one of the young ladies, like your daughter, had asked me because we've done it together. We've done youth camp. Your daughter, another youth leader. We were all doing the kitchen stuff together, and it's a lot of prep, a lot of work, a lot of love, and so we worked really well together. And we've done it for 4 years. 1 year I just fully helped prepare and drop off, but I didn't end up staying. They didn't need me or want me or whatever it was. Like we can never figure that out. Your daughter and this other girl just couldn't figure out what the problem was. I didn't know either. I would find more like closer to the event, like 2 weeks before, if I was officially going or not. So I just always just kept the window open just to be available because I wanted the youth to be able to focus on pouring into our kids and that we're going and just, yeah, we all want our kids to be set free and poured into and just be built up in the Lord. So, so your daughter had said, I wonder who's going to be helping you in the kitchen this year. And I was like, what? And this is maybe the end of April 2023. I'm beginning of May, and our meeting that we had Paul in was Wednesday, May 3rd of 2023. So somewhere in there, late April, very late April, early May. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, me and this other lady aren't going this year. And I'm like, you're not? Oh, I don't know who would be helping me. I never know if I'm going either. And then she's like, I know. So I was like, oh, and so, and I had gotten home and my girls were a little sad because they heard another youth leader wasn't able to go too. And now all these are moms. They all have young children. And so when I shared that with Pastor Paul that night, he was there for the question and answer night.
And it threw him off.
It threw him off. I didn't know. He didn't know. I'm usually the last to know. So I didn't know he didn't know or not. I didn't know anything, but he was a little, like his demeanor changed. He was a little like stern and I was like, well, just make sure that you have a good nursery area and have 2 helpers so that'll help the moms feel more peace of mind so they can have their kids and partake in youth camp as well. So that's what I was saying. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what the atmosphere change was. I didn't understand that until I don't know.
And I don't think when we left that night we thought there was any problems.
Yeah. Did you get rebuked for asking that question, or did you?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know rebuke at all.
What did he answer? Did he ever answer that?
He went on to say how that the youth camp has been built up over the years, and all it takes is 1 year to destroy a youth camp. It takes 1 year, and so he was trying to defend the youth camp. But I don't think he was saying anything negative about family camp.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just saying how important youth camp was.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know if we asked any much more questions after that. I don't remember.
I don't know that we really thought it went sour.
We didn't.
We just thought his demeanor changed.
Yeah. And we're like,
but we didn't know it went sour.
Yeah, we didn't know what it was, but okay, I guess I didn't know until Saturday, May 20th of 2023. Pastor Paul calls me on the phone, and this is the day before him and his family leave for a 3-week vacation. And he's like, hey, just want to, discuss something with you. You can come up to the house. I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I go up and I go, and it's always in the sunroom. His, I'm always assuming his wife's car's there. So when I get called up there, I usually don't see her, but but we go into the sunroom, which is like on the south side of the house, and there's doors, and so you go in there and you sit down in the couch area. And I was just really, my guard was down because I have been called up to his house before, numerous times, and called on the phone and harshly rebuked and for stuff that I didn't fully understand what I had done wrong. Um, and he speaks so harshly, my brain just turns into mush. And I'm just assuming because he's my spiritual authority that he must be right, I must be wrong, even though I'm totally confused and taken back when he does that. And um, and so I've just he hadn't done it in a couple years. I know it and um, I guess because if you sit down and shut up is, I guess, what's desired, I guess. I don't know. But I was relieved. I kind of thought everything was over and he wasn't going to be doing that anymore like he had done for years and years. And we had a little break, and I had really just started trusting him that January when I had gone to him for um, counsel. I'm going to him. I'm requesting of him for just some counsel on how to do things wise financially, because I was just stressed out financially, and just as my kids are getting older and they have, larger and more exciting needs. Anyways, so I sit there in his sunroom, and then he just comes at me. Who do you think you are to try to take over a youth camp with family camp? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. I have no idea what you mean. Um, he's like, you asked that question and trying to take over um, your youth camp with family camp. And I'm just so confused. I'm pretty sure I didn't ask that question. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Here I had for 3 hours, I'd been preparing for this sermon and for you ladies. And I just felt like I was like, I don't know. He just felt like he was not tricked, but I like we had an agenda or something, and I was like, "What?" I had no idea. I'm like, "What? No, 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 no." Even it was announced even in front of the whole church that it was like a men's theology night for women, and then here's the text that we got, like, "Come ask your questions," and youth camp and children's church, and there was a bunch of other different things because I hadn't been to all the ladies' meetings, so I didn't know what the whole
Well, and
thing
Christine, if
was.
I can stop you for a minute.
Yeah.
He was text or emailed, I forget which, the questions that were being asked. So, and one of them was, you know, um, should we have family camp instead of youth camp? That was one of them. Should women speak in church? That was another one of them. Should older women be teaching younger women and older men be teaching younger men? And I do believe that I announced it verbally at least once in the congregation. So he could not have been unaware of those questions. He knew that those questions were being asked, so he came unprepared for them. He came with a different agenda, and so uh, he was aware of it, even though he was. It sounds like he was telling you that that took him out of left field. That
Yeah.
you know.
But I was like, "What?" I was just like so shocked. I was like, here we go again. Okay, it's just a misunderstanding. It's just a misunderstanding. Keep calm. We're gonna get to the bottom of it and make things like clear. And I was just like, I really don't think that I asked that question. I'm starting to second guess myself. And this is what that happens in these, like, where he takes you alone meeting things. You start questioning what you believe and what you've done and everything. So I was like, oh, did I? I don't remember asking that. I thought I asked something else. So anyway, so then I think he was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but he had like a rap sheet, like a list of other things that I had done. So he's like, well, 6 months ago, you you asked in a Bible study if so and so, a young girl, amazing young girl, lady at our church, and she leads our youth. You had asked if it was okay that she was leading, and how do you think you made that feel? And you said we were wondering, and I was like, well, yeah, me and my family are wondering. I mean, my son is at the time 22 years old, and we just didn't know when is it when you're teaching men? Is it okay for women to teach men? Is it okay for men to teach young girls? Like, we're just all of it. Like, how is this biblically done? We're just wondering, because it is made a big deal from the pulpit that women aren't to, but yet where does the line end? So that was just a legitimate question. I said we, as in me and my children, we. Anyways, and he's like, well, that I've had to put out a lot of fires because of you, and you cause schisms and you cause divisions with the things that you say. And I'm like, what? And then he's brought up another instance that happened a couple years before. And apparently I had asked, and I mean, I remember asking because people had kept coming to me like, hey, when do you think, Decatur service is going to start? And I'm like, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm wondering. And then I believe someone had mentioned something about evangelism, and since Decatur services is evangelism, it just, okay, I should ask the question. People are asking me, why not just ask? And I don't know what time. I think it was during like prayer time or whatever. I don't know, when you ask for prayer requests, you ask questions, since I don't know. So I guess I asked that. I didn't know the details of that, but just wondering when Decatur services were going to start up again. And I said, some of us are wondering. And so apparently, and he goes, well, you said some of us and you said we, and your name always comes up with all these things that happens. Always, I have to deal with so many things that stop so many fires because of you. And I'm just like, what? And I'm like, I didn't even know if all this is happening all the time. Like our that church really has a big problem with actually people going to someone, if there is someone, and they go to the pastor, and then the pastor comes and rails at you for whatever the other person problem is, and you don't even know who the other person ever is. And then you start, is there even someone that exists, or is it just his problems and he's trying to say other people have problems? I don't know. But it makes you feel like, well, who doesn't, who has problems with me? I would love to go and apologize. That's what I would want to do. Well, who is it? But, well, who are they that he doesn't tell you? That's been a common thing. And then it makes you kind of feel a little awkward at church, and on a little bit like, okay, so who is like upset with me and isn't coming to me, but going to the pastor, and then he comes at me. It's not very comfortable. It's horrible. So then, and then he said that, and I was like, well, I guess, well, God must be really patient with me, because I'm not unfollowing him. He's going on for like 45 minutes trying to with this rap sheet. I'm saying we and some, and me asking that question I never asked. And so this is all the same day. This is all the same meeting. I'm up at his house on May 20th, the day before he leaves.
And it's just you and him.
And it's just him and me.
And you never see anybody else.
I never see anybody else. I mean, like I might hear, like, there's definitely someone else in the house. There's not like I'm, like, there's someone there, but I don't usually see them. And so, yeah, whenever this happens, it's him and me alone. And there was, I think, twice during lockdowns, COVID, Kyle was there. And I still don't even understand what those conversations were all about. Like, I just had legitimate questions as a single mom with what the lies that were coming in. And I totally believe God was showing me, like, this is a lie and we're swallowing it. Like, why are we trusting this? And I don't understand why. I just have legitimate questions why the church is rendered powerless. We can't hug each other. What if someone wants a hug and I want a hug? Can we both hug? Like what I thought, we lay hands on the sick. We're not allowed to see the sick or touch the sick or comfort the sick. I don't know. It was just really, I had a lot of questions during that. And then things that more a husband would have probably been addressing and stuff too, more than me, but lots of legitimate questions. And I could see the deception and the control and overreach of what was happening during lockdowns, and only be given things that weren't actually healthy for you. So anyways, and then we were kept being shamed. Focus on the answer, focus on the answer. Of course, later on, even just, the pastor. during lockdowns, focus on the answer, and that shame of focus on the answer. Okay, just focus on Jesus, focus on Jesus. Meanwhile, like my dad's like dying in a in a nursing home, not even because of the sickness, but because he's not being touched and he gives up hope. And a whole bunch of them were dying. Like, just all these things are happening that are real. And I'm just supposed to focus on Jesus. And I didn't understand that until the Lord like showed me this summer. You identify the problem, you deal with the problem while focusing on the answer. And that just relieved me. But I was not being taught that. I was being tied in a knot.
Yeah.
It was really rough. And so anyways, but yeah, so he has for years called me on the phone or called me up to his house to see him, and it's been alone. Um, but his wife is somewhere in the house because our car is there. So anyways, so he's coming at me. So this is the same. Sorry, May 20th. It's I mean this to be so simple, and I apologize. May 20th. Meeting is coming at me, and then I just finally, because I'm apparently guilty of the saying we and some of us and all that. And I'm just like, well, I guess, God's really patient with me. I'm so sorry. I had no idea that me saying those things were causing such a problem, and that I'm the problem and a problem. And so then I said sorry. And which is what I usually do, is I say sorry for what it is. He must be right. I must be wrong. He's the spiritual leader. I'm not. And I'm a woman, and he's a pastor, so I definitely must be wrong. I actually grew to be very ashamed of being a woman going there. So and then he brought up, well, because I had apologized to the congregation earlier that year in 2023 that I had because I was starting to go to him for counseling, and then I felt bad that I'm going to him for counseling. But I have this thing where I disrespected him at one point during the lockdowns. I understand it was hard for any leader with decisions and all that. For lockdowns, I was just surprised how the body of Christ wasn't involved at all. Like, what do we think? What do we see? Just, hey, you guys, what's going on as a body? If we're considered a family, just ask what we see and whatever's happening. So I disrespected that he didn't ask us at anything. He just was acting like a president or a king, that he had to make the decisions or whatever. And I just didn't see why we couldn't share. And so I disrespected that he never got us together if we're this big family. And so I apologized from the congregation if my disrespect affected anybody. Anyway, so in that meeting that I had with him on May 20th, he said, well, some people have come to me and they apologized to me for ever listening to you during lockdowns or COVID, COVID stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, who are they? No, I'm not, I can't tell you that. And I was like, okay. In the midst of the apologies and all that, sorry, I had said, well, he goes, he was mad that I talked about the women that weren't going. I had said that. And I'm like, well, I explained why your daughter had, I explained why. And he goes, and I'm like, if I was going to be going to youth camp, they were wondering who was going to help me in the kitchen. And he said harshly, who said you're going to youth camp? I was like, whoa. Well, I usually don't know until 2 weeks before. So no one said I was. It's just that I've been helping for the last 4 years in the kitchen. So he was just really harsh and stern. And that was just really, really wild and weird. So it gets up later in the meeting we had later. There's a point with that. Anyway, so of course the meeting ends well because I've apologized. I was, and then you leave, and the farther you leave, and you think everything's good because he's not upset at you anymore. And so I leave, and I'm going, you still leave with that sense that you've been doing so much wrong. But I leave feeling like I'm this horrible woman. I've caused so many problems. I have wanted to be a blessing, but I know I'm not perfect. And so I'm just like, oh no. And then I'm like, who has had to apologize to him and couldn't go to me? And who have I talked to? There's just like a handful of people I could process things through. during lockdowns. So I went to anyways, so I did go to I don't know, was it the five of you? I think it was you. Did I ask you if you had to apologize for talking with me? I don't know if I ended up asking you or not, but I asked the other guy who lives here in town. And so he's a big orchestrator of God used him a lot to show me there was something wrong as well. But anyways, and he's like, I'd have nothing to apologize to you for. And I asked another one of the guys on the board, on the church board. He's like, there's nothing I need to apologize for talking with you. I was like, oh, okay. I was just so confused. And anyways, and then we had the next day, Paul has a sermon, and then he takes off for a family vacation, and then we have a women's biblical Bible study again, biblical womanhood book study again. And I did not want to go, and it was in Decatur, and I live in Walt Hill. And your daughter was like, "You want to go with me?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just didn't want to go. I just felt so awful. It was horrible at church the Sunday before. I'm just I mean, when Paul was mentioning how for 3 nights for 3 mornings he would wake up bright and early at 6 a.m. and was just heavy, and he woke up heavy and he had to put on worship music. And I'm like, dude, I was literally doing the same thing. And I'm thinking, I'm causing that on him. I'm causing him to wake up that early and feel heavy. I feel the same way. That's exactly what's been happening to me. These are the thoughts all going in. I'm like this horrible woman. I'm the woman that the Bible like warns about. That's me. And so your daughter brings I don't even know what made me even say yes. Just I think that she was like, we'll drive together. I'm like, okay. So we go and we sit down at the meeting, and you start reading some pages that regard to women being silent in the church that were from the sermon that he had, but he actually didn't read those pages when he shared the sermon to us ladies on May 3rd. So this is now Monday, May 22nd, and we're in Decatur.
Right. And I believe the last chapter in the book was Should Women Speak in Church? Mm-hmm. And so that's what we were studying that night. And I had asked for his notes from the night he came to talk to all of us and answer questions. And I just read through those notes and just highlighted some things that I thought were key, and I brought those up. But I want to go back to you meeting with him, and even I just want to applaud you for even coming into church the day after that, that he had you in and made those false accusations towards you, because you did not say that. You did not ask that question. I mean, I have to applaud you because he put a question mark over our whole body, everybody in our congregation, by first of all not bringing who had the problem with you, not bringing whoever he said that he's been putting fires out with, why he didn't have them come in, because they were the ones actually saying things, but instead he gave you some people. He didn't, and so he put a question mark over everybody in our congregation in your mind. Like, who are these some people? And you wanted reconciliation. You didn't want to feel like that. So I have to applaud you for even coming into church that day, because I don't know that I could have done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was really hard because I thought those days were over because there was a break, and I just started trusting him again. And I didn't even realize those thoughts were there, other than, I really wasn't going to him for very much, other than like, when's a good time to start a meal for the fundraiser meals, or little questions. Okay, VBS, for doing VBS that year, and just different things like that, like ministry things. Mm-hmm. So, and on a personal level, you want to so badly. But I was actually just slowly getting in on that again. And I didn't even, just looking back, I didn't even realize that, I was just finally really trusting again. So my guard was down, and I was really not expecting that.
In that night, and
I come in on Monday night, and you're reading about
from what he had put in his notes about that.
about women being silent in the church and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I am. That's who I am. And it was pretty sharp.
It was very
It
sharp.
was very sharp.
One of the things that he said in there is the older women are like their tongue hangs down to their belly. I think that was one of his quotes, because they are gossipers.
Yeah. And at this point, like, I don't know. I think we think gossip is, which is a great tool from the enemy to keep you isolated, is
Yes.
that if you discuss anything, that it's gossip. If you're trying to figure out something,
It's gossip.
and it's a gossip. If it goes counter to what is being preached, it's gossip. If it's going counter against anything instead of going with the flow,
If you question,
that's
It's
considered gossip, which is a fabulous way to keep you isolated. I mean, a lot of sin can be put under the rug by the fear of gossip.
yeah,
And so, and I didn't want to be a gossip. So you're taking it, you're quiet, I had this big, just heavy, sorrowful, yucky shame weight just on me. And I mean, thank you for your encouragement. And I was just like, where else am I supposed to go? Like, besides my mom, who I've had to be there for her and learn to have healthy boundaries and stuff like that. Like, my nearest family is like 1,000 miles away. Like, where am I supposed to go? And that was
supposed to be family.
yeah. And I live in the same town. The pastor's like a block from me. Like, the church is a few blocks from my house. Like, I don't know, where else are you supposed to go? And you think that's the safest place on earth, and you don't realize you've been injured there the most that you've been injured anywhere. And so I'm coming there heavy and just thinking what you're reading, those notes, and I'm like, oh, she knows he's already talked to her. I am this, what she's reading is just putting me in my place, and I'm just feeling heavy. And then I remember asking at the end of the meeting and just wanting to apologize to the ladies, like, I am so sorry. I really thought that was a question and answer night, like a men's theology night, and all the ladies were
we're all on the same page.
we're like, me too. Everyone was confused.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I was just so confused. I was like, okay, so I wasn't just, taking, like, doing something from left heel and have this agenda against him, like, which I never did, but you just second guess yourself and you must be guilty of what you're being accused of.
You knew of all the subjects.
Yes.
And I didn't know all that background either. Like, anyways, I'm just.
So then we all went out of the church, and we were across the street, and I saw Christine. And
I was actually still in the church.
You were still in the church.
Cleaning up, tidying up.
I think it might have just been you and I there.
Yeah, and we were crossing the street because I'm going with your daughter, and her and another young mama are across the street
with their kids.
With their kiddos playing on the little things across there. It was fun, but
And I looked at Christine and I said, Christine, what's the matter? Because I could just tell something was wrong. And she said I was called up to Paul's house.
Actually, you asked me. I was like, oh. And you said, did you get a talk? And I'm going, and you're in this balance of, like, it's so, the heavy shame weight is so on me, and I have to hold my breath because he's going to be gone for 3 weeks to clarify and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, if I say yes, which is the truth, that'll be gossip. But if I say no, I'll be lying and I'll be carrying this thing that's smothering me. And I said, yes.
And then you had all these questions, like, who has a problem with me? Who is it that went to Paul? And Shelley's walking across the street, and you look at me and you said, was it Shelley? I think it was Shelley. And I'm like, no.
Oh, she knows. Don't talk to her.
It wouldn't be Shelley. And I said, could I ask? I said to Christine, can I ask Shelley? So
I overheard you say, no, I don't think that Shelley would ever do that. I know that she wouldn't do that. I said, I wouldn't do what?
Yes. And then I think you said
she had a talking to.
And then you were like, you had a talk? And I'm like, yes. And then you were like, I've had talks. I'm like, you've had talks. And then we all had talks, and we're like, what?
And I never knew that you had had any of those encounters with, I guess I called it the policeman, and not the pastor, the policeman that would accuse you of things and then bring up past things, um, past things that you counseled over, or past things. For example, once he said to me, "No wonder your kids are a mess. Look at you." You know, just, and it took me a long time to get over him saying that. And then I came to the realization one day, because he is a pastor that was 10 years running away from the Lord and in the world. And the Lord finally said to me one day, "Did Paul Malcolmson, um, was it his dad's choice? His dad was a pastor. Was it his dad's choice that caused Paul Malcolmson to go into the world, or was it Paul Malcolmson's choice?" And so the chains fell off of me that day, because I know that, when my kids go through trouble, it's because of the choices they make, not because of the choices that I make.
Mm.
And so I was finally free after a lot of years of believing that I was the reason my kids made bad decisions, or had trouble in their life because of the choices they made. He put that all on me, but that wasn't my responsibility.
Yeah. Wow. And so we were just kind of talking about like how we felt, I think, when he would come at us like that and what it does to our brain. And you guys were really concerned because wait, he was going to be gone for 3 weeks and you were supposed to carry that. That was so wrong. And how do we fix this? And then you guys were encouraging me, don't be alone with him. Don't be alone with him anymore. Who could be with you? And I wouldn't share the things with my kids. So I wouldn't have thought my kids, of course, my kids were, when my husband died, they were 2 to 13. And now they were, well, now at that time in May, they were 11 to 22. So I just, they're like still your kids, even though they're two of them are adults. But I just didn't think of like, bringing them in to talk, because I didn't, they had seen over the years, when I'd come back from his house, and then I'm like drying my tears and what's the matter? What's the matter? And like, I just needed to learn something, or I'd get off the phone and they would see me just like pacing or whatever. And I just needed, because he would go on and on and on, and just needed to learn something. And then I just didn't want them to come against him and like push him away and take the mama's side. And so they didn't really know, but they did see me jump when the phone would ring, or I'd get texts and stuff, um, because I was nervous it was from him and I was in trouble or something. So they told me that later on, that they knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what. So we were sharing about in front of there, and we're sharing how it made us feel, what he was like. I was like, yeah, it's like he has like a rap sheet. It's like he doesn't see me. I'm like not the person that he's, and for the most part, he's
Plates
nice
are
to.
full. They're not clean.
Yeah.
Even though we've been through, I had 4 incidents, I would say, or talks, or whatever we want to call them, 4 different times that he talked to me. And every time, if it was the 3rd time, everything that was in the 2nd and 1st time would come back up again. There was no slate cleaned. It was all just compiling, like a big snowball rolling down the hill, and it was just getting bigger and bigger, and it made me feel heavier and heavier.
Right. And then you were saying how when you had talks, it would put your mind to mush, and you didn't know.
I was always shocked
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know I did anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always wanted, I never wanted to have any aught between the pastor and myself. I never purposefully did anything to cause any kind of problems between him and I. And so whenever I would get the phone call, whenever I would get called up there, every time I was surprised.
Yeah.
Every time, because I never saw it coming.
Yeah. It's not like you're nervous, like, oh, I did that. What if we
Yeah.
weren't thinking, but eventually you're almost thinking that, but then you get kind of like, oh no, I could be doing something wrong for me.
But mine was
But
the
for
same as you.
that was earlier on.
I was in a honeymoon period
Mm-hmm.
for the last 2.5 years because
Yeah.
I just went in, sat down, and shut up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ever, if there was a conversation happening that I even thought I could get in trouble for, I would just slowly back away
Oh,
because I didn't want to get that phone call. I didn't
Because
want to get spoken to harshly.
in
Mm-hmm.
the past, it's been somebody's run to him
Yes,
and told him something, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes it was even something that was said in your own home in a private conversation
yes,
that somebody overheard, and it went back to him,
yes.
and you got in trouble for it.
hmm
In
Yeah.
your own home, a conversation in your own home.
Or something I would put on social media. I would get in trouble for that. So I had a legitimate fear. I'm so sorry for having to say the word fear because we're not supposed to have a spirit of fear.
Yeah.
But I had a legitimate fear of putting something on social media that I would get in trouble for. Or even as much as liking something on social media because I know an individual that did get called because they liked somebody's post on social media. And they got a call from him.
Yeah. Which is wild because I don't think he has those certain social medias.
No, it's
So
somebody
someone
told.
sharing with him.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the overall theme is
Yeah.
a lot of times somebody went to him, but we didn't know who our accusers were.
Yeah.
We didn't know who to go apologize
Because
to.
they wouldn't go to you.
They wouldn't come to me.
No.
Right.
Right. Which is incredibly unhealthy. We thought, I mean, it did get spoken of during lockdowns. Please go to the pastor. Don't go to the pastor anymore. Go straight to the person if you have any problems. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that would be so good if that would happen. Because I don't think, I mean, I know I'm not trying to cause problem or hurt people, or that's not what I'm there for. We just want to serve and be helpful and bless the body. And yeah, we want people to know Jesus, and that's why we're there, you know? So,
So the day after this whole us having this conversation and realizing that you've been talked to,
yeah.
I get a phone call from the pastor who's on vacation in another country, and I'm not sure why I'm getting a phone call. It takes me out of comes out of the blue, and basically it's questions about our biblical womanhood. How many more times are we going to meet? And then it was asked, how many times has Christine come? Um, and then I knew she was only coming to the Wall Tail services for the most part, and she had very seldom, I think just that once showed up in Decatur maybe. And then he came out with the accusation that Christine was trying to upend youth camp all on her own, trying to on her own upend youth camp. And I told the pastor then that I had never ever heard her say that because I hadn't. The question was asked that night, and I think we've already put it out here that Sherry asked the question, "What about youth camp
And family camp.
yeah, or excuse me, family camp? You know, in lieu of youth camp or whatever." Christine, I never heard her say that, but he was making that accusation to me on the phone. And then basically he went on to say that he was just telling me that because he was trying to protect the group and protect me because there might be trouble coming down the pipe.
Yeah, and then I find out, well, see if there's a problem, talk to leadership or whatever. So I talked to the leader girl of youth camp. I did call her and just like, hey, have you heard that there's a rumor? And I didn't even know that you had that conversation with him. I was just going off what he was telling. He was accusing of me that Saturday before he left for vacation, and so I did call the leader lady, and I was like, hey, have you heard a rumor that I'm trying to destroy youth camp and replace it with um, family camp? And then she's like, yeah, I've heard that rumor. And I'm like, well, I'm totally not. I'm like, I'm doing the fundraiser. 4 to 5 of my kids are growing. And she's like, "Oh, I know. It's probably just an attack from the enemy. That's what happens before youth camp." That is a big clue. What happens when things go weird at church? We always say it's attack from the enemy. I'm seeing the pattern now that I didn't recognize before. When there's actually something going awry in leadership, somehow it gets blamed on that's an attack from the enemy. So you never go to where the problem source is. So that's really interesting. Well, after talking with her, I told her, I was like, "Oh, I am so mad at the devil for wanting to destroy his vacation with his family, and he needs to be focusing on them. And here he is having to worry about when he leaves there that I'm trying to destroy youth camp." And I was so mad at the devil for wanting to do that to my pastor. Anyways, so I was just like so mad, and anyways, was praying for him, and I asked another guy if he had heard that rumor, and he said he didn't hear that rumor. And so I was like, oh, okay. So just clarifying. And then that I'm not. And then so that was fine. And then I didn't, I don't know what's happening in the background with things. Well, okay, the first time I ever got a harsh call, I should bring this up, is we went on a missions. You were on the missions trip, but you went with a separate vehicle because there were two vehicles. Anyways, and we ended up having a day, like a free day in a way, where we met with some families that we'd help with another missions trip with Hurricane Michael, which you went on, son. And so they were such a blessing. So we met with them, but they were late. So the ocean was right there. So we jumped in the ocean with our clothes for 45 minutes, and that got posted. And then someone threw a fit, went to the pastor about it, that we're on vacation, we're not on a missions trip. And we literally swam in the ocean for 45 minutes in our clothes while we were waiting, whatever. And then we met up with them, and it was the sweetest fellowship time, by the way. And so apparently he's getting all upset. I don't know. He's not on the trip. This is the first.
Who's the he?
The pastor. It's his first, missions trip, big thing without him, I guess. I don't know. So then we get a call on our way back. The one other, she's also a single lady who was actually orchestrating the trip, and she sent out the agenda, the schedule for everything. I'm just along for the ride and just willing to help. Me and my girls went. It was great. And then he comes and he had called her. Later on, we found out. Then he had called me, and he just went off for 20 or 30 minutes. Is this supposed to happen? Is this, I get calls, you're on vacation, and this wasn't on the schedule, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And is this how things are supposed to go? And I'm like, well, I guess not. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. And that's why I should be there, and da 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 da, and this isn't going to happen again. And he's just so upset. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that's happened. I'm sorry. Okay. And you just listen, because he's upset, and you're like, and I had nothing to do with it, but I'm feeling the heat. I'm taking the heat. It goes on for 20, 30 minutes. He goes, okay, well, all right. So anyways, I'm sorry about that. Let's just pray. And so we pray, get off the phone, and I'm like devastated. Like, what on earth? I was going on this trip, and I was just getting released from not walking on eggshells and fearing you're going to do something wrong. And just, I'm not going to fear I'm going to do things wrong. I'm just going to enjoy being a child of God. And then I get that call, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this. How do you do something without doing something wrong? I don't know how to do this. So that was
have a controlling pastor.
apparently, and I don't know, and I don't have anyone you're not allowed to talk about it. It's gossip. You don't have anyone to bounce off, and you don't know you need protection from someone who's supposed to be the most protected person in your life. He made a promise to my husband. He's told everybody, and I think him and a group of guys, they made a promise that they would protect and take care of us as if we were their family. And so anyways, but you just don't know. I'm in the cycle. It's just anyways. So that was my first time. And then, so you get that call on, so he calls me up to the house Saturday, May 20th. Sunday, he preaches and he takes off for vacation. Monday is when we have the biblical women book study. And that's where I break down, and you see me. It was so, I was actually so thankful I didn't have to carry that whole time, and making sure we need to make sure we don't have aught with a brother, but we need to make sure you're not alone. So that conversation happened, and then we did notice that, oh no, then the young mamas were coming up, and they were like, "What's the matter?" And they're hearing about how harshly he's talked to all of us, and then I see them, and I'm like, oh, but you won't experience this. Oh, and I'm so sorry. You should not be here hearing this. I'm so sorry. We just didn't see. We were just having that conversation, and they came up to the foreground. So I apologize to them there. I'm sorry. You'll probably never get spoken to this way. And then Tuesday, you get the call. And I think June 17th or something, he was gone for 3 weeks. They returned from overseas, and their oldest son is recovering from a horrible thing that happened to them. He was in the emergency room for like a week or something. And it was just a miracle that he got better in time and that he didn't die. And he got better in time for them to make the flight home. And then it was focused on youth camp. And so I did have a conversation the day before youth camp with um, Paul. I'm also being encouraged, you guys, don't speak to him alone. Don't speak to him alone. It's hard when he's, calling, and we're still having these conversations because we're going to be doing VBS and all this stuff. So it's hard to not know about answering the phone or not, because you guys had told me that your husbands won't even let you answer the phones by yourself anymore. You don't answer the phone anymore alone.
Has to leave a message.
Yeah, leave
or
a message.
Call back, and when we can put it on speakerphone and our husbands are there.
Yeah, and then both of your husbands are like, no, they don't like him doing that to you guys, and you have to have on speakerphone with them there. Anyways, so, but he actually had an encouraging conversation with him about me being overwhelmed. So I'm just trying to lay it all out there. And then that Friday, July 7th through 11th, so Friday through Tuesday is youth camp. And then so that following Sunday, after youth camp, because I understand the focus, like the pastor's oldest son was recovering, and youth camp was the focus. So I called him the Sunday after youth camp, which is July 16th, and I asked him, I said that we needed to meet, and I'm getting good counsel. There's another guy involved, and he's my son's best friend, and he actually let my son know what was going on, my oldest son, who was 22 at the time. And so my son went and did a deep dive into what is the role of family members to a widow. And he's like, nope, I'm old enough. I'm a man. I'm 20. And I've taught my children from the Bible. It's 20 and up for that you're like a man. That's what you go to war and stuff like that. It's like the biblical number or whatever. And so he did a deep dive on his own to find out what the role was. And yeah, he was the role to watch out for his mom and care for her as a widow. And his best friend was just encouraging and letting him know, and that I shouldn't be alone. And my son was alarmed because he was understanding from the pulpit, because a lot of things from the pulpit make it sound one way and paints a picture, but it's actually not exactly how the painting on the picture isn't exactly accurate, but it sounds really good. And so you just focus that way. And he thought that the pastor's wife was always there with me whenever I got those calls up, whenever I had counseling, any of that.
Who thought that?
My son did. My son thought that I always had, she must be there. He says, well, I never speak to a woman alone. I'm never with a woman alone, he says. And his wife is at the house.
The pastor.
The pastor's wife. That's what he says. The pastor says that. So it's assumed that she's in the room with me. I'm never alone with him, which is not the case.
Right.
And it can go on for hours.
Right.
It can be 10 minutes. It can be for hours. You don't know.
It's never been 10 minutes. It's been an hour or 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, on the phone it might be. Maybe. It depends.
Right?
So, yeah, so I let him know, and I'm gonna that I need a meeting with him, and my oldest son's gonna he finds out that my oldest son's gonna be there, and then he calls me again, even though I'm being cautioned, don't take any calls from him. And so that Sunday I called him, July 16th, Monday, July 17th, he talks to the gentleman, my son's best friend, an older gentleman that's been helping us identify that I shouldn't also, who can be the person. It could either be him or my son, to talk with him, and they had a talk for 3 hours and then multiple hours during that week.
So it was the pastor,
The
and your
pastor
son's friend,
and my son's best friend, an older
had talked
gentleman,
multiple times.
times during that week.
And is that the week that we got deemed 3 divisive women? I believe it is.
I have no idea, because part of the rumors weren't always getting to me. And I don't know how they got to different people. I don't know who was I mean, I do know the inner circle spreads them now, but I didn't. There's a lot of things I was oblivious, but I did have, like, know some things, and you knew things. I don't know. So,
Because I think,
because we live in different places too.
well, and I think I would say up until a month and a half ago, I was so careful. I was so very careful to talk to anybody, to say anything to anybody, because I didn't want to get in trouble. Because I didn't want, and so there's that word fear again.
Mm-hmm.
I was fearful.
Yep.
That
Fearful and intimidated.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a huge thing. About intimidated, I'm finding out a lot of people are intimidated by our pastor, which is, I found out later, is like a ginormous red flag. You should never feel intimidated by a pastor. Only wolves are intimidated, because we're the sheep of his pasture.
So for the last month and a half, I don't have fear.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
I don't have fear.
Yes.
I'm not under his controlling leadership anymore, so I don't have fear.
That's so wonderful. Yeah. And yeah, so he had talked to me that week before we had our meeting, that he was concerned that my oldest son Elijah would be there, because, he was like, as if he was a child. We don't want to, bring our kids on this, and it's too heavy for them and all that. And I'm like, I understand. I've really taken that to heart, what you've said over and over the years, that we don't let our children know anything and stuff like that. So, but this was actually out of my control. So I wasn't the one that notified him. And so it's in God's control, right? And so it is what it is. And he goes, well, I was glad he did say this. Well, if he goes or he doesn't go, I'll be fine with it. I just had to get that off my heart. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, so it was actually, like a decent conversation. If all the conversations were like that, there would never be a problem. So you guys know, that would have been awesome. But yeah, so we do meet together. So it was the Tuesday, July 18th that he had, our pastor Paul had called me about Elijah getting involved. And I also had to clarify with him that one of my middle son, there was a rumor that was being spread to, just in that last week, that he had shared with my oldest son Elijah's best friend, the older gentleman that was helping, seeing that this is not okay. The pastor had told him that I had actually set my kids against him. And his example was that my middle son had said something a couple years earlier in tweenies. So he's maybe 12 or 13. And he had said a snarky comment. They had said some statement, and he's like, oh, well, our pastor wouldn't do that, or something like that. And the pastor's daughter was in there, and the leader of the group called the pastor, and the pastor called me that my son had done that. And I was like, okay, wow, all right. And then I was a little shocked that the leader didn't come to me, but I was like, all right, I expressed that. And then so he's like, well, involved me, and it devastated my daughter. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I talked to my son, and my son called him later that night and apologized. And Pastor Paul said he totally forgave him. It's totally fine. It's as if it never happened. And that happened a couple years earlier. And then now he's telling my oldest son, Elijah's best friend, the older gentleman, helping with this, that I've set my family against him. And my middle son that said that, he never said anything else against our pastor. And he also said, well, I mean, he's pretty cool and he teaches pretty well. And that's what he said after that. But he wasn't, no, I was not setting my kids against him. They were actually, they didn't know why mommy was crying and shaken up after conversations and stuff with him. So anyway, so I clarified that with him. And because I didn't want him feeling heavy about that, I have there's that rumor that he's set my family, which he's the one who's starting the rumor. But I didn't want him to have that. I'm like, I didn't set my family against you. So anyway, so then that Saturday, July 22nd, this will wrap up hopefully pretty quick. Saturday, July 22nd, I had cleaned 2 businesses last minute to help provide for my family. So I'm doing a lot, of course. And then that Sunday, we do a fundraiser meal.
That you're in charge of.
So
It's
I guess
not just a fundraiser. You're completely in charge of it.
in charge of it. But the ladies are so good at, or even the men bringing food items and stuff.
Yes, but
It's
still,
such a
it's lot.
team.
Just the orchestrating of it all is primary.
Yes, and the cleanup.
And the
Not that you
cleanup.
didn't have help, but
This time was wonderful. It was so wild. It was so wonderful. The youth actually helped clean up. And it was so nice because there's times I'll be doing the dishes. I'll bring them home even just so I'm with the kids. And I won't be done cleaning up till 6 in the evening, all the stuff. So it was just so sweet to have, like, everyone was just like, where do you want things? And it was like, wow, we were really, really working like a team. And I would have to say there's a young lady who is a helpful giver, very much like me, but she's like 10 years younger. And she also has to learn when to say no. We do not say no. With so many doors of opportunities to help open to us, and we don't know which ones to say no to. So we usually just say yes to all of them. Anyways, but it takes a toll on us, but we just are thinking, well, God will give us the capacity for it. And then instead of thinking, well, wait, what does God actually want us to do? And we can't tell the difference between if it's God that wants us to do it or I don't know. We just can't tell which doors are God's or not. Anyways, so it's a big lesson, but she was really sweet and thoughtful. She knows. And so I think she was really helpful as well with orchestrating the sensitivity for that. So that was really sweet that they helped clean up so I could get to this meeting. But before I got to the meeting, while we're, eating and cleaning up and stuff, one of the church board members went up to meet with our pastor. So for an hour and a half before I even got there. Anyways, so and by the way, that next day will be VBS, which I'm also helping orchestrate and heading that one and for a whole week. And of course the lady from Children's Evangelical Fellowship. Oh, she's just a blessing. Just great. Just so great. Really, I was just felt like coming alongside her, and then the different people at church helping it was just so sweet. It is so sweet to do ministry together. I really love that. So, and then that following, so I'd run it for the week, and then that Friday I was renting a car. Our friends had paid us to go visit them in New Mexico. We had 2 sets of friends. We all know each other originally from California. And I would drive through the night because I was a rental, so I couldn't have any other kids drive it. So I had to drive through the night to get it there within 24 hours. So it was the cheapest way to get there. So anyways, you got it every dime, right? Anyways. So this meeting happens where it's Sunday, July 23rd. After the fundraiser meal, I'm meeting with our pastor. I'm meeting with the church board member ends up coming because he wants someone there too. And then my son Elijah's there, and his best friend, this older gentleman, he's there too. But somewhere along that week, he flipped. So
your son Elijah's older friend.
He flipped. And I understand, because if you talk to Pastor Paul, he gets in your ear. He's very persuasive. Of course, he's a pastor, so there's a kind of loyalty. There's this ooh and ah about him that you think about him, and you think of him as this amazing man of God. And so,
and surely he's telling the truth and we're not.
Yeah, surely he must be telling the truth, and I must be mistaken or I must be wrong. So there's all that. The Lord shows me later. So I'm so thankful. But I'm in it. I'm in it. And I am just so nervous. I'm totally filled with fear. And I'm like thinking I'm not being spiritual. God doesn't give us a spirit of fear. I'm like so terrified. Why am I so fearful? They already had their seats. He sat there. The board member sat there. My son's older best friend is there, and the only seats that are the smaller love seat or this bigger love seat, and it's like after 2, and so we sit in the bigger love seat, and the sun is beating in. Yes, I am in my early 40s, so I understand like our hormones are adjusting, but I have been running to capacity. But it is getting hotter in that room, and I'm drinking water and I'm shaking and I'm nervous. I'm like, what is going on? Like you know how you envision something happening and the worst case scenario, that's basically how it came out. I thought I was gonna be able to share and it'd be all pleasant and it would make sense and then it wouldn't happen anymore. Oh no, I'm just fumbling through it because I don't have you guys there to help me through the conversation either. I'm nervous. My heart's racing. I'm like literally, it's getting hotter and hotter. I'm sweating.
Would you say, so then tell me if this would sum it up in
Mhm.
that meeting? And I know we haven't used this word, but you're sitting there with your abuser. Is that okay to use that word?
Yes. Well, I didn't have a term for
Not at,
anything at that
not at that
point.
point.
No.
Spiritual,
Spiritual.
verbally.
Spiritual
Well,
and verbal.
No,
Yeah.
you're not talking about.
I'm not talking physical. No.
No, never
So-
have been.
So, but that is probably why you're feeling all these emotions or these feelings. But you're also sitting there with people that aren't really seeing what you're seeing.
Yeah.
You even though it's your son,
He
at this
didn't.
point
Yeah.
he didn't understand, he didn't see. So you're pretty much in this room with 4 men.
Oh,
Am I right?
yeah.
Would that draw up a picture
Yeah.
that nobody knows what you're talking about?
Right. Yes. Unless they've already had been talked to by my abuser, who's already thrown whatever information he wants them to have in their mind
Yes.
by the time I'm there.
Did that? Does
Yeah, that
summarize?
sounds so, and it will be confirmed like a little bit later. So I'm like trying to share the thing. They're passing out. They're going to sleep. They slept through like they're just passing out there while I'm talking. I'm like, oh, this is so embarrassing. I'm getting my paper. I'm doing this. My son's like, stop, because he thinks I'm crazy, and I'm literally drinking all my water.
By the way, I'm her son behind the camera.
Yeah.
So in case you're wondering. Yeah.
And I'm like I'm losing vision in my left eye, which has been starting to happen in the last 9 months. I went to the eye doctor, and it's because I'm dehydrated. So, and I'm trying to get as much water. I have at least a half gallon. I'm trying to chug that thing, and it is just getting hotter and hotter and hotter in there. I'm in the sunroom. It's right. We just happened to be, but the only seat that was where the sun was. Anyways, so I'm trying to share my story, and then I share it as shaky as it was. It's hard to follow all of that. And then my son, he was just like, "Hey, Pastor Paul, can you just speak to my mom more
Yeah.
gently?"
Yeah, that's all I asked her. I just asked, hey, can you just speak to my mom more gently? Because I'm thinking this is just more of a misunderstanding, blown out of proportions at this point, and I don't fully know the exact all the backstory, I guess, because I knew about my mother and how she would get the phone call. She already talked about that, but yeah, I knew she was getting turmoil, and she didn't like any calls from Paul Malcolmson, but. So I'm hearing our question. I'm hearing her say her thing, and he say, and then the pastor saying his thing. Now, to me, I'm thinking it's just misunderstanding. He's thinking this way, thinking that he's more innocent than he is, and that my mom is just happens to be ignorant in this matter, like about like the us and them thing. But
And yeah.
I,
And you said she really doesn't know what you're talking about, though, Paul.
Yeah.
Can you please speak with her more gently?
and that's what I asked her. I just asked, it's like, hey, well, can you just speak to her like softer, just more gently, all that. And he didn't say anything. It was kind of like he was thinking, but he didn't respond. It was really weird, and so there wasn't a yes or no answer.
No.
So it was just kind of, and I only had one request that entire time, and he didn't respond to it.
He said, "Well, I was just trying to help her." And I was like, "Oh." And you know, the tensions in the room, it's crazy hot, all this stuff. "Oh, he's just trying to help me." "Oh, then he's just trying to help me." Sorry if I messed up the mic thing. "He's just trying to help me. I'm misunderstanding him. It's not a rap sheet, it's a help list." And then so I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And the tension in the room breaks. I'm just like, I don't want anything between, whatever.
She starts breaking down.
And I'm like, "I'm so sorry. It was okay. You're just trying to help me." Which that conversation he had with me wasn't trying to help me, but in my mind, I'm just in this cycle, and you subserviate yourself to the person that is like supposed to be your leader. So I just subserviate myself,
and then
and I say, "I'm sorry."
like what, 2 to 3 hours?
It's been
it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been yeah, 2 hours at this point.
And at this point I'm kind of over it, and I don't like how it's not really going. Like, I'm thinking it's just a misunderstanding. She starts breaking down, crying or whatever, and it's like, and she starts apologizing. Okay, and so there's part of me that wanted to be over, just didn't want to go on anymore. But at the same time, it's kind of like I didn't fully understand what was all going on and how bad this was.
And then while I'm crying, then he goes, "And how do you think it makes me feel when I'm over there in vacation with my family, and you ladies are bashing your pastor, bashing me behind my back?" And in my mind, oh, it must be bashing when you find out there's a problem and you guys confront it, you relate it, you see how to resolve it, and they encourage me to go talk to him, but not alone. And they are like saying, "Yeah, because this isn't okay, and it shouldn't be happening to you, and you're a widow, you don't have someone there for you." So that is bashing. So in my mind, I'm going, "Oh my gosh," because we said anything at all and identified the problem, that was bashing. So I apologize again. "I am so sorry I made you feel that way. I don't want to make him feel bad. I don't want to make anyone feel bad." And so I'm apologizing to him again. And then he goes, "Turn on the air conditioner. We should turn on the air conditioner." Yeah. And then he turns on the air conditioner, and everything's all happy. And the air kicks on right away, and the cool air. I'm crying.
He hugs.
There's the hug, and
he starts smiling again.
Yep. And then the board members like, "We're just so thankful that you're here," and he starts listing all this encouraging stuff, and I just start crying again, because I'm like, everyone that goes there needs to hear how and to be encouraged and hear those things. Everyone needs to hear those things of how they're wanted, and their giftings, and just how they're a blessing. Everyone there, and everyone needed to hear that. And then so it was all good. I'm like, "Okay, we're all good. He's happy, so I think I'm happy. If he's happy, I'm happy." And all that. I'm like, "Okay, so no one's mad at anyone." And I just misunderstood, and I was wrong, and I said sorry, and then I we left there.
Yep.
And I felt so ashamed that I'd like cried, and it was the worst case scenario of how I was sharing it, people passing out. It was just not how I was thinking it would go at all. But and you're like, "It's okay, it's okay." And then we do VBS, and then I leave that Friday to go to New Mexico. I visit my one family friend. So precious, love them so much. And then I go visit our other friends. She's like I call her my best friend. She's my longest Christian friend. So we've been friends for however old you are. That's how she was the nursery worker when he was little. Anyways, and so her and her husband, we were hanging out with them. So it was a week with one friend, a week with her. We all did get together. That was so fun, and had a fun evening together. So she has 8 kids, the first friend, and then my best friend and her husband, they're pregnant with their 10th, and they homeschool, love the Lord. So sweet. We're all like more reformed in our theology. We all grew up Calvary Chapel and stuff, and we all started homeschooling, and we all had 5 kids at the same time. It was cute. Anyways, and more reformed in our theology. But anyway, so And then with the husband and wife were just having this one evening about three nights before I leave. I think it's on the Wednesday, before I head out on the 11th of August. And they were just saying, so how are things going at church? What are you learning and how are you? I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, because it's been a little heavy and I just didn't want to do things wrong, at church anymore and stuff. So I was like, well, I'm not supposed to say we and some of us. And they're like, wait, what? Yeah, I got this call up to my pastor's house and he thinks I'm trying to destroy youth camp and praise it with family camp. And then I'm not supposed to say we or some of us because I apparently I've been like a just been causing fires and divisions and a schism maker and so and the husband sits up. He goes, is it just you and the pastor? Yeah, the wife's there somewhere in the house. Wait, she's not there with you? How many conversations have you had with him alone? Almost every. I mean, there's been 2 where the elder is with him. But mostly it's just him by himself. Okay, wait. And I'm like, and the door's shut. Wait. He has all this alone time with you and no one else is there, so it's always your word against his word? Yes. You don't think about it. That's not okay. And these things he's having a problem with you don't really make sense. And they're like, is this a church plant? And I was like, yes. And they're like, okay, so who's holding him accountable? Like, where did he come from? Well, he come from overseas. And I mean, he has the blessing of the other church, but I don't know what they know. But we have a board and there's 4 guys. But he said at this meeting, the meeting that I had with you, that he only needed one of them to agree with him on a matter for it to be a rule because mostly it's every time it's 5 out of 5 times or every time it's 5 out of 5 they agree on everything except for one time it's 4 out of 5. So he just needs one guy, and they're like,
And by the way, Paul Malcolmson he's considered a vote.
oh, he's a vote as well.
There's 4 members of the board, but then there's him as well.
So that's 5 total, and he's on it.
I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, apparently I didn't know that that's actually not a healthy thing to have.
No,
I didn't know that. We didn't know how we just never thought about how our gatherings supposed to be run with elders and bishops and deacons and all that. I never really dived in and thought about it really. Anyways, so they're like, okay, wait, he just needs one person. No. It's a church plant. He's actually not being held accountable if he just needs the one guy. And he's talking with you alone all the time, one-on-one. So it's your word against his word. He shouldn't be talking to you like that. And don't feel bad that you're shaking and making a mess of it and not making it clear. Cause I'm like, well, he's been, so like he's done this for me or this for us. And they're like, I don't care if he bought you a house, which he never would, but like, I don't care if he'd bought you a house. He's never to talk with you alone like that, ever. And they were just like, whoa, the husband's like sitting up and he is just like, this is not okay, Christine. This is not okay. And I'm just like, it's not okay. I'm like, oh my gosh. So like, it's kind of like your whole world is like, needs to go on rewind and replay again because you're like, wait, what? That's not okay. Wait, what? No, that isn't. Oh boy. And they're like, this is red flags, Christine. It's a church plant. And then he's like, let me see the website and like all this stuff. And he's like, no. He is not being held accountable. He can make up anything he wants and he's making up all along the way. He's just making up rules. And you need to get your kids out and run. I know I can't tell you what to do. We're just highly recommending that. I'm like, I can't leave. This is where like we don't do sports. Like we serve at the church. Like that's our extracurricular. Like this is our life. Like we live there. Like it's in the middle of nowhere. Like, oh my goodness, like leave. I mean, this is our world. I was like, what is going on? And I'm a steady, so I love sticking with things and just staying with it. You know what I mean? I just love to finish it and we're just going to stick with one thing. And anyway, so I was just like, whoa, okay. And then I kept going, but he's done this. I'm like, I don't care. He never is to do that to you once, ever. Is this the same guy during lockdowns? Because I was discussing them, like what do you do during lockdowns? Because New Mexico, their governor totally didn't care about the people. He didn't listen to him. He's supposed to be a servant to the people, and or it was a she. I don't know. Anyways, and they wouldn't listen. They're picking their signs of everything, and they're just doing their own thing, overreaching, just acting like they're God and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, okay. Anyways, but so I was just like processing some things during lockdowns too, and they're just like, oh my goodness, girl, you gotta go. This guy is not being a pastor. And I'm like, he's like, where are the men? What are they doing? And I'm like, well, we're all intimidated by him. Intimidated. That's the biggest red flag. And no, you should not be intimidated by him. Anyways, he's just a man. He's just a man. And I'm like, yeah, but he's the authority. And and like da da da. Anyways. And so it took me a little while, and they just prayed for me, and then I left, and I was like, God, I can't if I'm saying this is actually not okay, and I am literally modeling for my kids, if I keep going, that it is okay for them to be treated this way. It is okay for them to be under this authority that's actually not good. And then my best friend had said, like you're just saying now, you know why you were shaking and stuff in that meeting? It's because you were confronting your accuser and your abuser. That is why. And I was like, oh, it was so soothing because I had been holding on to that for months. Anyways, I was like, oh, and I was just beating myself up over that. And so it was just kind of wow. I was like, whoa. And so I cry out, God, I have never walked here before. I have never been here before. I need your help with this. And the next day, I'm like cleaning up a bathroom, and the Lord's like, write a letter that the elders need to step up and share their point of view, and they need to be there. They need to be there for him by sharing their point of view. And you guys, they can't just, be yes men and lock in step with him and just be agreeable to be agreeable just because he's persuasive and his ideas just sound perfect, even though you have different ideas. And the wife needs to be there. And even when there's counseling with abused women, because the men will not understand what it's like to be abused by someone who you love and trust and who's stronger than you. They will not understand that. A woman will. And if they do understand that, then they have a heart for that, they will be great leaders. But anyway, so I just sent that there. It was the Lord just like, write a letter, and that's how you'll share it. So Pastor Paul always says, bring it up to the authority. So you'll give it to the authorities, you give it into their hands, and there you go. And then I can step back. All right. So hey, so that Friday, August 11th, I drove through the night on the way home to get the car back by Saturday, August 12th, for the car rental, and that is when I shared with my kids what has been going on, and the calls to the house they've been harsh, false accusations, what he's been doing to my mind, why I didn't tell them. I didn't want them to, go against him, and, because they felt like they would just automatically defend their mom, because if I'm in the wrong anyways, then I'm in the wrong. I didn't want them to pick a side just because I was their mom. And so what I shared with them, I have to take the three of you, and we're stepping back. And I thought they were going to deal with me harshly or think I ruined their life, because we're just starting to get the friendship thing rolling again. Because since we've been going there, it has been incredibly lonely. I was feeling like, has our life been sabotaged? It's just really weird with friendships going to that church. I had my sisters in Christ like you guys, which is I'm so thankful to God for. But my kids were having a really hard time with the friendship thing. So that was really wild for me. And I find out later there was sabotage. Anyways, but I thought they were going to get mad, and they're like, no, Mom, we totally understand. They're like holding my hand. Oh, now that explains so much why you would be jumpy and you're tear stained and all that after you would get come back from Paul's or get off the phone calls or jump they were the ones that we noticed that you were jumping I didn't even realize I was jumping. They told me that. Oh, we saw you jump when the phone would ring or when you got a text. So that explains so much, Mom. And I'm like, you're not mad? I'm like, I don't know where we go. I'm waiting. I'm hoping there's going to be repentance. I'm hoping that there won't be a problem anymore. I'm hoping it'll be a blessing for everyone, that'll all get, fixed. I didn't have a plan. There wasn't a plan other than just waiting for them to, I don't know, just repent and step up. So, and you can't have reconciliation without repentance. Like, I can't reconcile to an abuser if they have not been right before God, because they will just feed off that and they'll do it again, because the real problem isn't with me and them, it's with him and God. So you don't reconcile with someone who's unrepentant. It's impossible. God couldn't reconcile with us until there was repentance. And so I love the closeness. It's dangerous actually, and it makes the person who's abused, when you go back to them and they haven't repented, it deceives them in thinking what they're doing is actually okay. So it's like comfortable in the pig pen. And you don't want it comfortable in the pig pen. You want them to be right with the Lord. So, and that's like salvation and the gospel. So anyways, so I drove through the night. I told my kids, I told my son and my daughter, the older two, they're 20 and older. And there was like, compassion and they're like, well, I totally see where you're coming from, totally understand, but we don't want to leave. And I'm like, okay, like I can't make you, I'm not here to force you. Plus, why would that, if they're unsettled and there's no closure, it wouldn't make sense either. They'll have to see things for themselves. And I even wrote in that letter, and I hope we posted, I'm not ashamed of it, just fuzz out the names, but I wrote in that letter, please do not interrogate my kids that are staying. And that was honored, except for a young girl. She did interrogate towards the end. So, and let's see. So then on, so I got home on Saturday. When I finally got to my house, it was on August 12th. It was 2 p.m. and I passed out while visiting with my girls. And I woke up that evening and was totally clear and typed it all out. That alone was just a miracle, that I still had the thoughts and could type it out, and send it to our leaders that evening. It took a little longer because I didn't have everyone's email. So, and then Sunday, August 13th, I and my 3 youngest kids did not go to Light of the World or the Decatur service that evening, even though our dear friends from out of state were visiting. So Monday, August 14th, we had our study group over for my older kids with schooling, and we found out that a precious baby in our church had died. Everyone was just wailing. It was, just heartbroken. He was just so precious, so precious. Their family is so precious. And then that Thursday, and we did get to help and be a part of the family, with help and just be there for them, just help with whatever they needed. And then that Thursday, the family did get to say goodbye to him, and they wanted us there to be a blessing. And then his funeral was a week after he died on Monday, August 21st, and that is when I had sent the letter on the 12th of August, and August 21st, one of the board members actually acknowledged me with it and reached out and just said, "Hey, we love your family. We love you. We miss you. I don't know what to do about the situation." And I'm like, "Well, I'm praying for wisdom, because in order to have wisdom, you have to know things. If you don't know things, you're in the dark. And without knowledge, God's people perish. So, so if you don't know things, how can you have understanding? And then how can you have wisdom?" And so, and it was hard because they weren't really searching out to know things. So they were going to stay in the dark. And I'm finding out that abusers love you to leave fearfully and silently. And it was really weird for me because the abuser had full control of everything.
And
everyone. And so, and he knows our weaknesses. He's been studying us. He has books and notes on all of us. We've all opened up our hearts to him, and he knows all our dirt, and he knows that we'll cave in. He knows if we're people pleasers. He knows all of that. He was a cop for 15 years as well, plus studying secret societies. So he's got all this knowledge in him. So it wasn't, obviously, the baby's funeral on August 21st, that one of the board members, elders, deacons, whatever you want to call them, that were on the board, did reach out and let me know, and that was really kind. I know your husband was on there as well, and he responded like with a warm hug. and stuff like that. So yeah, anyways, but there wasn't any like reaching out just to make sure, hey, can we hear your side of the story? What's going on? And then on the 28th of August, I did send out a text because it was like, what have we been going through? Is there even a name? I don't know how to start. And my daughter had sent me a video.
So just out of
I'm gonna,
curiosity, I'm just
yeah,
curious. From the time you wrote the initial letter until now you're talking about, did you get any kind of conversation from the pastor? Were there any text messages, phone calls?
no, other than
anything from the
maybe my dog went up to his house.
But I'm talking in reference to the letter.
No, nothing, no conversation from the pastor
Okay.
or the
That's what I thought.
elders.
I
Yeah,
wanted to clarify
until I reached out on the 28th of August.
that. Okay.
So another week goes by from the funeral, and I understand it was that the baby died 2 days after I wrote the letter. But if I wrote it any later, it would have been worse. And so I'm thanking God on that timing and stuff like that. This is a situation that had been going on for years, and so I'm sorry it was confronted 2 days before the little guy.
Right.
Like I don't know what else to say. No one could.
No.
And so. So there was 2 heartaches to have to take care of. I totally understand that. And so you're just being patient and, timing and all that. And then on the 28th, I did send a text out with a video that my daughter had sent me that actually had a name. It's called Spiritual Abuse that we have been going through. I didn't know it had a name. And just not everything on there hit the thing, but 2 out of 3 things hit it. And it was a 16-minute video. I sent it to them. They refused to watch them. And they sent it to me, and one of the member that was at the meeting I was with my son with, he was just ashamed of me that I left fine and I came back not fine. And I thought it was over with and all that. And he doesn't understand the cycle of abuse. Or if you're abusive, then you won't, you will defend. It's very scary. If you're in leadership, are you guilty of abuse yourself in these cases? Or you're so allegiant, you just can't see. And I was deceived as well. So I get it. I was defending my abuser. So all of that. But he just texted. He was really, really harsh. And then the other elder guy said that, well, you need 2 or 3 witnesses. Anyways, I used the Timothy verse that I read when I was out there that talks about, well, if it's against the elder, you need 2 or 3 witnesses. So I was like, well, I have 2 or 3 witnesses. It's not just me. This is a pattern. And let alone, we don't even talk to people that leave the church. So that was the only correspondence. So then she wrote a letter. And so now there's 2 witnesses of the same stuff.
And I just want to clarify, were you requesting to go before the board?
I was requesting they resolve it and go with all of us before all of them. So we can get the story straight. Because I'm not going to share it straight without you guys' part in what happened this year.
And so that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. I got the letter, and then it brings me up to date. I got a letter that it was dated September 6th, so 4 weeks later. And I received it. Well, I received a note of it Friday. She received hers on Friday, and then I got it on Saturday, September 8th and 9th, and that's when I received it. And then so basically a month later. And it was basically saying that I needed to repent again, and that there needs the definitions even of repentance was off on that, anyways. And they and he lied and said he apologized to me during that meeting that I had, and I verified with my son. Did he apologize? I do not remember him apologizing at all. I think I apologized to him twice. He goes, no, he didn't apologize. And then so that letter was basically, no, we're not going to get together. I'm not going to watch your stuff. Stop sending us anything, which it was just a little correspondence. I told him, repent, Pastor Paul. It could happen to the greatest of these, and you're the greatest of us. It could have happened to anyone. Watch the video, just see, And he wouldn't. All he wanted to know was who's the 2 or 3 witnesses. He asked me, who are they? 3 times in like 2 hours, and I wasn't going to respond because I'm like, whoa, why? First of all, he should know who he's been hurting. And second, all they have to go to him. And so she wrote a letter and sent it. So now we have before the board, so they all knew what was going on. And it's not just this isolated, like widow person that has a problem. it's a little pattern. And so,
I have
yeah.
to interject here. So you had written the letter Saturday night,
hmm
and this precious little baby died Monday night.
Yes.
And so you wanted to say, it's okay that they can't meet with me. It's okay that I'm not receiving any correspondence from them because this very sad thing is happening to the church, correct?
Yeah, there's like grace there, but I
Yes.
still think it's odd that no one's reaching out.
Right.
And so no one's reaching out.
Right.
I did this with the little correspondence I sent on August 28th. And then basically, I got reprimanded by the board member that was in the meeting because he doesn't understand. Like, first of all, I didn't see what swamp I was in.
But I have to interject that
Yes,
it took them 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
And that little baby died Monday night. And we had stepped back from the church for a month.
Okay, you as well.
And the pastor was several times texting my husband and I, wanting to meet with us. And in my naive state, I thought it was because he cared about us.
Mm.
And so why I stopped you is because even though nothing was said to you, that little baby died Monday night, and he was willing to meet with us Friday night.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really weird.
So even though you were giving him grace, which was such a sweet thing, he was willing to meet with us. And I was naive. I thought he was wanting to know, how are you guys doing? You haven't, been to church.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to interrogate me.
Wow. And then Pastor Paul said he was going to reveal stuff on Tuesday. So that Tuesday, September 12th, he went on a rant and he talked about, basically he said the spirit that was coming against the church was a territorial spirit.
As well as 8 other
There was
names.
8.
And 8 other names.
Yes.
And he just went on and on. You guys, like it was.
Hour and 20.
Wow. And it was supposed to be a prayer night.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a prayer night, but it ended up being an hour and 20 minutes of speaking.
About witches and evil spirits.
Yeah.
Different names of what was coming against the church, and then it was 20 minutes or less of actual prayer. So.
Right. And then, yeah, I'm just talking about witches and principality or principalities, demon or demons, like singular, plural, and
without saying
the names. And honestly, the for sure demon was you, and I think I was the plural, but they weren't sure yet. This is my own conjecture, and people were coming really hard against you, thinking you just had a really big problem with the women's group knocking down from 2 meetings a month to 1, which you actually were just having a problem. I mean, that was weird that he was doing that, but it was because you had a problem with him being spiritually abusive and doing that to a widow. And that was your last straw because you've been dealing with it. And then my son Elijah's scales fell off his eyes that Tuesday night. My daughter, she was weeping while she was listening. Like she was just, it was like you might as well have said their names.
Yes.
And it was just awful. There's a lot of people. There was a group in there that have no idea what's going on, but then there's the inner circle that knows exactly what's going on. But then you're being fed this thing, unity, and we're being attacked when actually a pastor was just being held accountable for his sin. That's all. He was held accountable for his sin. And then that Sunday, September 17th, you did your mic drop, which that was what the Lord put on his heart to do. And you have to be 2 steps ahead of your abuser. And he wasn't being held accountable.
Yeah.
He wasn't being held accountable.
That's a story for another time.
It is a story for another time. And he wasn't being held accountable. And then I started talking to people that left the church and what he has done behind our backs.
Up
is
until that
horrible.
time,
Yeah.
you were so gracious. And I'm not saying you weren't afterwards, but you didn't want to tell your story. You wanted people to find it out. You wanted it to get resolved from the pastor,
Yes.
the leadership. So people were reaching out to you saying,
Yes.
we missed you, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Not
you were
people
just-
in the inner circle.
No,
but
you were just
the-
trying to be very careful
innocent.
and cautious and let the people in leadership take care of it.
Yep.
And then you got that letter.
Once I got the letter,
you were like, okay.
all right, this is why I'm not going.
Yeah.
All right. There were some persistent ones that I had to share, but it was very close to when I got the letter anyways. There were some very persistent. I had to share, hey, I'm going through some stuff and I've put it into leadership's hands and I'm just
Right.
waiting for a response.
Right.
And yeah, and then to open up what if does God care more about his sheep or the building? His sheep. And I've had to ask that question.
And the only reason I bring that up is because I think there's all kinds of talking that's been going on
Mm-hmm.
that isn't Correct.
Right.
And you were seen in a bad light when for that 4 weeks you did nothing.
And
You remained
I remained
peaceful
quiet
and gracious
and holding my breath. Even with my son, he would ask me questions, and if I knew the stuff that I know about Pastor Paul now, it would have freaked him out. Because he's like, "What? Do you have something against him? Are you critical of him?" I'm like, "I'm not critical of him. I think he's amazing. The only thing is that he's doing this to me and us, and that's not okay." And
It's completely different.
yeah, now we're finding out. No, this is such a bigger problem, and even the stuff we know isn't the half of it. We don't know the half of it. Yeah. So, and what he's been saying, and the people that have left, and it's so sad. There, mind you, there are some people that have left because they have vertical issues with the Lord, but there are quite a handful. There's a blood trail of people that have left because over the years, and even when we started going, he goes, "Oh, it's so great that you're here. A family of 4 just left," and I was like, "Oh, I wonder why they left." Like, oh, and then
this particular time was a mass exodus.
yes,
But there has been a trail over the years of people that have left. This particular time was a large group of people.
A large group of people. And the inner circle wasn't, going, "Where are you? Where are you? Like, where have you been?" None of them. It's like they already knew something from him, the inner circle.
But we were guilty of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
In the past.
In the past.
Before this all came up.
Yes.
We were guilty of that too. He would drop something from the pulpit about somebody having some sort of bad spirit, Jezebel spirit, whatever, and then we'd be like, can't talk to them. That's what our mind first went to because we're afraid of getting in trouble.
Right. And it was a very unhealthy pattern that it wasn't even like a said rule. We just all like locked in step. It was an automatic reaction and response. And then we wouldn't seek out. I mean, I reached out to the one lady, but she was so terrified when she left because he told her, "Don't you talk to any of these women at church." So she was so terrified. So like her and her husband were just distraught about what they had red flags and when they had to leave, and it was really heart-wrenching how they had to go. So she was afraid to talk to anybody, and which keeps you in the dark. And I thought we were supposed to be transparent, and we do not act transparent. We don't act like loving. We should reach out and find out why. We should literally why, what's going on. And I think my biggest heartache, and I pray the church wakes up that if there's abuse going on, we should be the first and the safest place for someone to land and open up and share, and we should be defending the abused. But instead, we defend the abuser and we accuse the one who's abused. And it's further abuse, and it really messes you up. And I was guilty of that with your youngest daughter. We should have been so there for her. We should have had men just saying, "No more, no more."
It's also a story for another.
It is another story for another day. And it was so sweet. I asked her for forgiveness, and she totally forgave me. God's so good. God's so good with that. And she's been encouraging me and been praying for me and my family. And and same thing with the other lady that had left. And she's been praying for us too. And God's just done such a work. And with all the hurt that you guys have all had in the past has been a blessing for me and my family with that. And it was so weird that he didn't mind if my family was ripped apart as long as they're following his agenda. And he didn't care about that. He didn't care about the widows and the fatherless as long as it was going with his agenda. And I did ask God for forgiveness. I'm sorry for fearing a man more than what fearing what he thought instead of me more than what you thought instead of me, Lord. I'm so sorry for my idolatry. And God just instantly, totally forgave that. And then you can see and hear God's voice, and you don't want a man in between like God's voice. You need to hear what God says about you and the truth that he has. And so, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for spending the time.